Welcome back to another week of the Rev MD podcast. This week, we're going to talk all about eligibility and the top 3 things you should be doing in your practice today. We often get asked questions about eligibility and about denials related to eligibility, and oftentimes this is the responsibility of the front desk. So when you think about kind of splitting up the responsibilities around the billing process, right? It is a coordinated effort between the front office staff, your billing company, whether they're in-house or outsourced, and then managing those AR denials or AR in general with regards to your insurance AR. It all comes down to why are payments not coming in? And one of the most common things has to do with either demographics or insurance issues, which all boils down to eligibility, right? So if you have a practice where you are checking each and every patient's eligibility prior to them coming in, then you're going to be set up for success when it comes to getting paid timely and not having this balloon of accounts receivable. So today we're going to talk about 3 things your staff and your office need to be doing with regards to insurance eligibility. If you are new to the podcast, my name is Heather. I am a physician and the owner of a medical billing company with my husband. We own a full service medical billing and coding company, and we help physician practices with a reliable and data-driven service. Anybody who is our current client knows we are all about the trackers, tracking those accounts receivables by claim, tracking those denials, getting feedback back to the practice so that they know why we're getting denials. And if there's things that we can do to fix those, that creates the KPI that we start to work on, right? Some of those reasons for denials are fixable, right? Eligibility, prior auth, coding issues. Some of those denials, medical record requests, etc., may not be preventable, but the more we can do to track those and stay on top of them, the easier it is to manage the accounts receivable. All right, on to the tips. All right, tip number 1. When do you do eligibility? This is often a question I get asked, or who needs eligibility? And I'm going to make this very, very simple. Every single person needs eligibility for both their primary and secondary insurance. Don't just click a button for the primary insurance. You've got to make sure that the secondary insurance is accurate because that can also slow down claims. So, and the when part is really several days before your patient is seen in the office. And an even ideal better time is when the patient has their appointment scheduled. So let's walk through that, right? Patient calls, you potentially have a VA or an office member of your staff who's answering the phone call. They're getting the patient's demographics and information. They are getting their current insurance information, including the full subscriber information, any secondary insurance. All of that gets recorded at the time that the appointment is set. And during that time, they're going through and actually checking, does that patient have active benefits that your practice accepts? And so that's all happening at the time that the patient is scheduling their appointment. So they schedule the appointment, they're checking eligibility. If there's any eligibility issues, right? Coverage isn't active, it's a plan that your practice doesn't take. You have that conversation at that time, right? You tell them that you're out of network. If you accept out of network patients, the form that they're going to need to sign, all of that is dealt with before the patient even gets put onto your schedule. Then say 2 to 3 business days, ideally 3 business days before the patient is seen, your office staff is running through the full list of patients for that day's appointments. So say it's, Wednesday, they're dealing with patients who are supposed to come in on a Monday. And on that Monday, they're checking all of the patients that are going to be seen that day. They're addressing any eligibility issues. They're calling patients ahead of their appointment and saying, hey, eligibility failed. Do you have a new insurance information? Do you have a new card? getting all of that cleaned up. And they're also getting all of the information around copays and deductibles so that when the patients do show up on that Monday of appointments, they are saying, hey, you owe the $20 copay. Your deductible still hasn't been met. You may need to pay $100 or $150, whatever the deductible is, best guess, right? Because you're trying to guess what CPT you're going to use for that patient. So all of those things are extremely important. So again, when and who is extremely important. When is going to be at the time of appointment setting, and again, 3 days before the patient is seen in the office. And the who is every single patient you see, every single primary insurance, secondary insurance if they have it, and capturing all of that information ahead of time. Then ideally, when the patient comes in to check in, you're verifying that information. You're scanning cards if necessary. You're having them sign that no information has changed since the last time you saw them, if that is an established patient. So again, all extremely critical things. All right, tip number 2, how do you do eligibility? Most practice management softwares will have a button that you can go into and push and check eligibility fairly automatically. And this is a great feature, but it's not perfect. And so you have to help your staff understand that if there is a failed eligibility that comes back, before calling the patient, they should first go to the payer portals for that insurance and check through the portal system. Worst comes to worst, they may have to call, but getting to the root of are they truly eligible or not is going to take some work in about 20% of the patients in your office when it comes to using a PM software. So they can, again, go to the portals, they can call the insurance company, get all of that information. If they're still showing as inactive or ineligible, maybe it's specific to a plan, maybe it's subscriber information, then they can start calling back the patient and saying, hey, we need to get further information, or did you know ... maybe their plan or something specific is not eligible with your practice. So again, you're taking care of all of that ideally at the time that the insurance is discovered and you've put them onto the schedule. Or worst case scenario, it's 3 business days before the patient is coming into the office. But again, last case scenario is right before they check in or right as they're checking in. So before they've seen the physician, right? You do not want to be dealing with this stuff on the back end side after we've submitted the claim, because the likelihood that an eligibility issue comes up that you can't correct, right? They're out of network and now it's too late. They haven't signed a form. You just have to write it off. It's lost money. So please make sure that, they're checking this again at the time of appointment setting, and worst case scenario, you're addressing those issues before the patient heads back to see the physician. So again, that's tip number 2, which is about how do you do eligibility. And if you're listening to this podcast going, gosh, this would be a really good thing for my staff to listen to, share this with them, make sure that they understand eligibility as well, or have a refresher. And this brings us to our tip number 3, which is really about training and feedback for your staff. You have to have a very clear understanding of who's responsible for this. And again, most billing companies have the front desk manage eligibility because they're the ones interfacing with the patient. They're the ones who are scheduling the appointments, calling the patients, getting all of that stuff buttoned up as they get ready to be a patient in the office. So you've got to understand, okay, who in my front desk is going to be doing this, specifically the individuals. And if you have a small practice and say you have multiple staff members who work different days of the week, you should have a clear schedule around, okay, it's Wednesday, what day of the week's patients am I checking eligibility for, right? So say it's Wednesday, they're obviously managing any new requests that come in for new patients, scheduling appointments, dealing with that eligibility process, but then they're also checking patients' eligibility for patients coming in the following Monday, right? Trying to capture that 3 business days ahead of time. And so you just have a very clear schedule. Okay, it's Wednesday. They're going to check Monday's eligibility for patients. They're going to clean all of that up. They're going to get all the information on copays and deductibles. So when the Monday morning person comes in, they have the clear list. They go, okay, Susie's coming in. We've, had issues with eligibility. I'm going to make sure to get that information cleared up before they see the physician. Or Johnny is going to have a $20 copay. I'm going to collect that. And again, all of this stuff can be tracked. So you can have an opportunity to have feedback. So if you have an office manager who's checking on front desk staff productivity or, feedback for training, you can pull a list and see actually when was eligibility checked, who did it fail on, did it get resolved? And so all of those can be built into checks and balances within your practice. So again, this is an opportunity to have a policy. You guys know we have policies in our practice and in our practices as well as our business. So we create policies, for the billing process. We create policies within our practice about how we do audits. Everything is a policy. This is no different. Have a policy and procedure in your office regarding eligibility, who's doing it, when are they doing it, what are the expectations, what are the goals, and then how do we get feedback to the staff regarding how efficient they managed this process. And as always, your billing company should be working with you to share, any denials related to eligibility. So that, again, that's another feedback loop to your staff, to your front office staff to say, hey, we're having issues with eligibility. We've got to make sure the staff is trained. If you've got new staff, that they really understand how incredibly important this is. So again, we talked about the three tips. Number 1 is when and who do you do eligibility with? Number 2 is how do you do eligibility? And then number 3 is all about training and feedback loops to your staff. So again, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. My only request is please share this with other doctors or other healthcare team members in your life. We are trying to hit and educate as many as possible. And as always, if you are in search of a new billing company, we would love to chat with you. You can check us out at nationalrevenueconsulting.com. We have added a recent section on testimonials that have been provided to us. So please check those out. If you're trying to figure out if you make a change this year, we have a few left spots for practices that we help. Again, we take a limited number of practices each year, and we would love to help you guys. So reach out at nationalrevenueconsulting.com, and we look forward to hearing from you. Talk to you next week.